So what I have here is an original set of spindles from a 1958 wheel horse. And then I have some spindles that I made out of brand new parts. These original spindles are in pretty good shape, and I chose those to copy. So here's the parts that I need to make a set of spindles, one left and one right. These are parts that I make. The spindle shaft, which is the one that runs vertically, I'm going to use 1018 steel. But the horizontal shaft, which is the one that the wheel bushings ride on, is the one that usually shows most of the wear and the reason for replacing them. That longer one I make out of 1045 steel, which is harder but still machinable. So that'll reduce wear, help make them last longer. So the first step in this is to match the vertical shaft with the arm. So this shaft has to stick out the proper distance so that the dimension from this surface to the bottom of the snap ring allows it to fit. So the first step in the operation is a fixture to establish that location. And that's this piece. So there is an adjustment on the bottom, and that's what positions the shaft depth when I weld those two parts together. So this piece here was made out of scrap parts. That's why it has some extra holes in it and some odd shapes to it. But I welded the pieces together and then machined this bore and this face on the lathe at the same time. So this face is relatively perpendicular to the bore. And then I've adjusted this screw so the dimension comes out right between this snap ring and the face of this steering arm. So I'm going to clamp these together, and that's going to hold those two parts perpendicular to make sure everything's square. I'm going to hold it in the vise here. And I clamp that arm in position. So I have this fixture marked with an R for right and an L for left. Because a part like this, which is really on the right side, when you turn it over here, it's on the left of the fixture. But the point of this is so that I can tack these in position and not have the weld interfere with where these axles go at a later time. So for the right hand spindle, I need to tack over here and here, and for the left hand spindle, I tack on these two sides. And that leaves this area open so I can position this part properly when I put it together later. This is the fixture that I made to duplicate the angle and hold the axle in the right place relative to the spindle. So it was built around these original spindles. These pieces fit into this hole, and they are adjustable sideways. And that acts as a diamond-shaped pin to locate this arm sideways. The thickness of these pieces of steel here is the same as these arms. As you can see, the originals fit into this fixture, and every part that I make, I expect to fit into this fixture when it's done. So here's an example of a new part that I made, and it also fits in that fixture. So that's going to ensure that each part that I make is the same, or is at least a reasonable copy of the original. So these parts that I made so far fit into this fixture. I have this one fits on this side, as the welds are positioned to not interfere with the way this axle fits into that. So that's going to hold the axles in the right position while I weld. Now I only do these one at a time. And I clamp each part in position. Make sure those are touching. So I'm not done welding yet. I like to save the two large welds on each side for last, after this washer's placed on there. So in order to ensure there's enough space for the wheel to fit on properly, I have this spacer, And it's made to help me position this washer where it needs to be. So that guarantees there's enough space between this washer and the snap ring for the wheel to be in there properly. Now right now I can see that this washer does not have enough room in there to move it down to be centered around this piece here. So that means that this weld is slightly in the way. So I'm going to go file that weld off until I can move this washer around where I want it. Then I'll weld that in place. Alright, I got my spacer on the axle. I got my snap ring in place. And the flange on this fixture is the same diameter as this washer so that I can center it up. And that's where I'm going to clamp it in place so I can weld it. Now I'm going to put a nice big bead on each side and melt all that stuff together. Well, that's what they look like after being wire brushed. Got some little balls on here from the welding. I'll have to knock those off. And I can also use this tool as an inspection to make sure that there's no welding slag on these shafts. Now, I wire brushed most of these areas, but there's one on here that didn't come off. So this piece is a little bit snug going up on there, but it certainly won't go on because of that piece right there too. So now I need to get that off of there without hurting that surface. So when you use a grinder or a file, there's a good chance you're going to get a good mark on the shaft where you don't need it. So I'm going to try to break it off of there. So this is a wood file, or I'm sorry. So this is a wood chisel that I have sharpened a little extra blunt that I use a lot for scraping. And I'm going to see if I can break that piece off of there. I'm going to use the flat part of the chisel to stay against the shaft so that I'm not digging into the shaft. So that didn't take very much, and it's really, and I can't really feel anything right there. So I'm going to take a little emery cloth to that and should be able to get my tube up on there nicely. Right now it's a little bit tight. I like to have them looser on there, like that. Alright, I got this piece to fit onto all of these shafts properly. And also removed the little balls off the bottom. Got them all cleaned up. Now, one of the tests I like to do is to see if they fit back in the fixture again. See, here's the original part. This part is supposed to drop in there too. And this one should drop in there. That looks pretty good. Alright, another test I like to do is to make sure these holes are okay. Well, that's a 3/4 inch hole there. And that's a 3/4 inch shaft, so I can check the holes that way. Parts that I copied are from a 1958 wheel horse, but these parts should fit all of the wheel horse Right Away Juniors, made from 1955 through 1959. Alright, that's it.